This is a tower garden. This is an ALTO garden, and this is an EXO Tower. These are the top 3 tower farming brands in the US and arguably the world. And in this video, I'm going to test over a dozen different crops in each of them for a full growing cycle. We're gonna see all the nuances between them, the pros, the cons, the price points, and by the end of this video, I hope you will know which tower would be best suited for you if you wanted to try a tower farming system. Let's start by unboxing everything, beginning with Tower Garden. Now I bought 10 at once, which classifies as a tower farm. So I got a bunch of different hookups, and what I'm gonna do here is make a smaller version to mimic the Tower Garden home, which like the other 2 towers, comes with everything you need to get started. For example, unboxing the ALTO Garden, we see our tower pots and some rock wool. This looks well packed. Then I'm pulling out the rods, the basin, the net pots, the timer, the pump. Really, you should check, make sure you have everything, and mine did. I also thought the manual for the ALTO looked great. And now the EXO Tower, it's cool they sent some stickers. I'm gonna do the same thing, pull everything out, make sure I have everything, check out the manual, and get ready to build. What do you think?
I like it.
You like it? Here's a single tower pot for all 3 different systems. This is the Tower Garden, the ALTO Garden, and the EXO Tower. Now, as you can see, they all have 4 planting spots per pot, so that's the same between them. They do go down in size. Now, it feels like all of them are pretty good material. All right, so I've just got done setting each of them up. Here are my initial thoughts. So the Tower Garden, I built these many times. These lights though were extremely heavy. I could not believe how heavy this unit was. These are very strong though. Like, it's great material. Like, this just, it feels like a monster, like a beast. That said, the lights for the ALTO Garden were a breeze. This thing just came out, fits on nice, and I had the lights plugged in like 40 seconds. So I like that a lot. That said, the build of the pots here was a bit more difficult. I wasn't able to do it just by looking at the manual, and I had to watch a video on their channel, which is okay. Video was great, but that was a little difficult, more than I was expecting. All right, now the EXO Tower was the easiest to build of the 3. This, I really didn't even have to look at the instructions. It just came together really quickly, really nicely, and I have to say I like the way this looks here in the corner. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and get some lights for this guy, because you can see he didn't come with lights. I'm gonna be using Barina T8 full spectrum lights. I may hang them, I may use a frame, I'm not sure yet, but then I'm going to run all the plugs and get everything turned on, and let's see how it looks. I gotta admit, this is looking pretty cool with the lights on. Now I'm gonna fill up the bases with nutrient water. I'm using Tower Garden solution, except for the EXO Tower because it comes with its own. So we're gonna measure that out, pour it in, mix it up, and then I'm going to test the towers to make sure the water pumps to the top correctly. You never want to transplant before doing this, because if it's not pumping right, you're gonna have to take all that out, fix it, and try again. Look at how different the net pots for each one is. So my thumbs here is the Tower Garden, the middle one's for the ALTO, and these little guys are for the EXO. Let's fill them with their net pots. All right, it's officially time to transplant, and I'm getting excited because I have so many different things to test in these towers. I have 6 different types of lettuce, 2 different types of kale, basil, cilantro, arugula, spinach, a bunch of different flowers, including sunflowers. And you know, the goal was really a few things. First, I wanted to grow things that I eat, that I think people will eat and want to grow in them. But 2, I wanted to see if maybe one crop will do better than another for who knows what, how it's built, the lights, but also to push them to their limits. I want to see what these towers are capable of. So this is what I've elected to do. So let's go ahead and transplant now. All right, I've just finished transplanting and these towers are looking beautiful. I'm pretty beat, I'm ready to go to bed, but I'm also so excited because we did it. We're here, I'm testing these towers, I'm trying different things for you guys. When I first got into this space, man, there's just so much you don't know. It makes it hard, it makes it difficult, it's like a mystery. And what I wanna do is make it easy for you guys to know what's available to you, to inspire you to things that maybe you'd wanna grow. And I'm just wanna make good YouTube videos that help you guys along your growing journey, all right? So if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and I will see you in a few days. All right, it has been 10 days. I wanna talk about some of the differences between the towers and then we're gonna compare crops grown on each of them. So number one, the ALTO Garden and the EXO Tower came out the box at a max planting capacity of 24 plants. Now, I think you could add one more pot to the EXO, so it would max it at 28. And I'm sure the ALTO, you could add more pots. I'm just not sure if it would be with the same pump that came with this. Usually, if you have more levels to do, you'll actually have like an upgraded pump. Now, the Tower Garden maxes out the box at 32 plants. And the reason why is because the Tower Garden has these high density planting pots, which have 8 spots per pot versus a low density pot, which only has 4. And that's the same as all pots for every tower. Now, I know the Tower Garden can go up to like 13 pots. The towers I have in my larger farm downstairs actually are 9 pots, which puts my total planting capacity with a low density tower at 36 and with a high density tower, 144 plants. Now that is a lot and that's cool and exclusive to the Tower Garden that they have these high density pots. Now I'm sure that ALTO Garden is going to make one. I don't know about EXO Tower. However, there is something more to be said about these two because I mean, they both have 24 plants, but obviously the ALTO Garden is much bigger, right, than the EXO Tower. So while it is smaller, it's really meant to grow things smaller as well, or it'll just be more demanding for how soon you have to harvest it. Like all of this lettuce right here, I know I'm gonna have to harvest sooner to keep this more, to grow better and viable than I will on this tower. Like each spot has way more space to grow. So if you want to grow plants to more maturity, well then an ALTO Garden would be the best route if you have the space for it, right? All right, and now let's go ahead and compare a few specific crops. Let's start with Pomegranate Crunch. This is one of my favorite varieties to grow, sell, and eat personally. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and set this down. Now I'm gonna come and pull that same crop out the ALTO Garden. Now let's pull it out of the EXO Tower. I say the Tower Garden is the biggest. The EXO Tower comes in second, and then the ALTO Garden comes in third here on size, but all of them look great. It grew them perfect. I'm not seeing like any leaf burn. I'm not seeing any sign of it being like unhealthy or stressed. And that's just really good to see in all 3 towers. So let's go ahead and put these back. All right, now I want to compare the basil. And let's start with the EXO Tower. Basil is one of my favorite herbs. I grow a bunch of it, you know, obviously to eat it, but I also sell a bunch of basil. Where are you? Right there. For the ALTO Garden, also looks perfect. Beautiful cups forming. I don't see much discoloration. And here's the basil on the Tower Garden. This one looks maybe a little bit more grown than the others, but it also looks very nice. All right, and lastly, now let's compare the sunflower here. Now, this is just a challenge grow, right? Good big stem. because these aren't necessarily a conventional thing to grow in any of these towers, but I did it specifically to challenge it, to see what they're capable of. I know it's a little bit too big. They grow big roots. The plant itself is going to be super large, and I hope we just see it, grow up. We have some massive sunflowers here. But by challenging it in this way, we'll get a better idea what they can really do, Here on the EXO Tower, same thing. It looks full and rich, nice thick stems. In fact, I should probably come trim one of these. I see this has 2, but that's great. That's what we want to see. And I think that is enough of a comparison for now. There's more I'd love to talk about, but we'll do that as we give it more time to grow. And so I will see you in the future.
It's beautiful.
They all...
It is absolutely beautiful. Look at all the varieties, the colors, and the lights really seem to help them grow evenly, huh?
Yeah, right. Instead of like the overhead ones like we have in the farm downstairs.
These are so pretty. The red, that's not pomegranate crunch, is it?
It is.
It's really red though, like really red.
Yeah. This is the EXO Tower. This is the ALTO Garden. And this is the Tower Garden. Oh, no.
Oh, I want a salad.
All right, it's been 21 days since we transplanted. I want to go over each tower's performance individually. We'll compare some things again, and then I'm actually going to harvest some. Let's start with the EXO Tower. I think this tower is doing great. Everything that I planted is growing, from the lettuces to the herbs to the kale. And the only issue I'm seeing is that it is pretty crowded. Like I said in the previous section, when things are this densely planted, you're gonna need to harvest them, trim them more frequently so that they don't grow into each other. And I've let this grow more than I normally would before harvesting, so you can see what happens if you don't. For example, on these leaves, we're getting some discoloration, running into each other. They're like curling up, they're even drying out. And this head up here is actually overshading this speckled romaine, so this isn't growing as fast as the others. And when I harvest this, you'll see that it'll just open it up more to, again, everything can get light, it'll grow more evenly, and that's what it's gonna take to grow with something dense like an EXO Tower. But the trade-off is that you have 24 plants in a smaller space than it would take with the other 2 towers. And now the ALTO Garden. I think this tower is also doing very well. From the lettuces to the pak choi to the cilantro here in the back, I'm happy with how this is doing. And the ALTO is most like the Tower Garden in its build, but it does have some distinct features. So I was curious to see how it would do, and I have to say I'm impressed. But what this tells me is that, for one, it's distributing water evenly. Also the lights. This is telling me that these lights are in fact enough. And as these leaves are getting bigger, I'm noticing it's kind of picking up pace and it's starting to fill out the space. So I'm really happy with how this tower is doing as well. And now the Tower Garden. This tower looks phenomenal. And I think between the 3 is growing the best. From the high density pots here up top, which are just so rich and full with all these types of lettuces, to the low density pots growing the arugula, the mustard greens, you can just tell it's growing faster than the other 2. These lights are more powerful than the ones that come with the ALTO. They also appear a little bit longer, reaching more to the bottom than the ALTO. If we compare the kale on the Tower Garden versus the kale on the ALTO Garden, you can just see again that the ALTO is just a few days to a week behind in growth. It's still growing very well, it's just taking more time. Being that it has high and low density pots, we're experiencing both worlds, right? That we have in the EXO and the ALTO. And I've also let it overgrow so that you can see that this too, for the high density pots, is gonna need more upkeep with trimming and harvesting. All right, and now I want to take a look at the reservoir basins. From what I can see, it looks like the EXO Tower and the ALTO Garden are about ready to be filled with some more water, but the Tower Garden here is okay. Now the truth is, when I bought my towers for my commercial operation downstairs, I got the Flex model, which has a larger base. So if it was the Tower Garden home, this would actually be smaller and it would be about ready to be filled up too, I'm sure. That's pretty cool, okay? We've been growing in these for 3 weeks and only now is it time to start doing some maintenance, right? I gotta fill them up with some water. All 3 of these systems are in fact easy. They are plug and play. They're watering themselves. The lights and everything is on a timer. They turn on and off by themselves. And now is about the time to where we get to start enjoying eating from them. So let's start harvesting. All right, first let's trim the Tower Garden. So if you have a pair of clippers, you can use these. But honestly, what I usually do is you just come to the outer leaves and you're just going to pull those right off. This I found is the easiest way. And by pulling off the outer leaves, the inside will keep growing out and we can come back and just harvest off this for a few months. Wow, we got over a pound of lettuce just from that harvest on this tower. Yes. Completely free of herbicides, pesticides, preservatives. I'm telling you folks, when it comes to your own greens, this is where it's at. All right, it's been over a month and now I'm going to review and harvest the kales, arugula, the mustard greens, and we're gonna look at the pak choi. Now looking at these towers, this is the perfect time to tell you something important about using them. Now as I've said, they're very easy to use because the lights, the pumps, they turn on and off by themselves. I've really only been in here to fill up the bases every few weeks or when I'm gonna harvest. I mean, beyond just wanting to be in here because it looks cool, these are so low maintenance, they don't demand much of you. However, each plant that you grow typically has a set of best practice tips to get the best harvest or fruiting, for things to fruit more consistently or to fruit longer. And just because you're growing in towers does not change that. Now, since we're not outdoors, we don't have to deal with obviously pests, with the weather, we're way less prone to many different diseases. But if you want the best result from whatever you're growing, it is going to take some tending to the plants. Now, I've just let these towers pretty much ride because I want to test their limits. I want to show you what overgrowth looks like, as well as some of the complications you have if you're not tending to some of these plants. For example, the basil on all these towers has begun to produce flowers, and I haven't harvested any of them. This has definitely shortened the fruiting stage on these basil plants. You actually can start to clip these flowers and try and get them to produce 2 new main branches. And these are just things that you need to do if you want the best result growing basil, right? If we look at some of the arugula and even the mustard greens, they have begun to bolt, where they produce a long stem to begin to produce flowers and then seeds. If I was harvesting and pruning them more frequently, that probably would have been prolonged off till later. All right, now before I start pulling some of these out, I just want to quickly talk about the sunflowers. They are growing on each of the towers. They're forming these thick stems. They're reaching up the sides and it's starting to form the heads. I'm excited to hopefully see these bloom. Let's pull out this pak choi. This is the pak choi. Look at the size of that leaf. It's like the size of my face. Look at those nice, large, big white stems here. And the roots look great. Healthy, long. All right, I've done something wrong here though. You notice how there's 2 plants growing from this 1 cup? That's wrong. For pak choi, for lettuce, you really should only have 1 seed, 1 plant per cup. So I'm actually gonna come in here now and I'm gonna chop this smaller one off. Very nice. That's some early eating right there. And here's the pak choi from the ALTO Garden. Roots look good. Again, look at those really nice white leaves. It looks great. Look at how massive this 1 leaf is, again, compared to my face. Now let's do the mustard greens. Wow. You see that? So that's what I'm talking about. Forming some seeds, a little bit of bolting. Good practice, come in. Chop them right out. But wow. It's great. Awesome, more good roots. Good growth in there. Big difference, right? So this is the Tower Garden, this is the ALTO Garden. It has not grown as much, but it has grown. These look healthy. Oh, gotta let us see. Perfect. You want to start chopping this and throwing it in your stir fries or maybe some wraps. It looks great. All right. And here is the arugula growth from the Tower Garden. Looks good, looks healthy. Again though, we got this sucker coming up. What we should do is, I know we're supposed to chop that off really earlier than that, but anyways, arugula has such a distinct smell. So immediately again, we can see that the ALTO Garden produced a not as full of a result, but it did still grow. It still grew very nice, looks healthy, looks good. This is also ready. You'd start chopping some of this and eating it up. All right, here is I believe this is a Siberian kale. Maybe, is this white Russian? It's one of those two, okay. I love a kale salad with some little mandarin oranges and like a nice ranch dressing. Oh, it's phenomenal. So that's good. Now we'll pull off the kale here from the ALTO. Totally see. Again, the Tower Garden just grew a thicker result. Here's the dinosaur kale from the Tower Garden. Pretty awesome result. Can you just see, can you just look at these leaves? It's so distinct, isn't it? Why they call it dinosaur kale, I guess. So this is definitely another good result. Now let's pull off from the ALTO Garden. Boom. And here's on the ALTO Garden. This is also good growth, ready to be harvesting many of those leaves. Not as much as the Tower Garden, again, but still good. It grew it. It's just, not growing as fast. You'd have to give it more time to get to this size. So usually I would harvest these on the tower, but because I have them out, now I'm just gonna harvest them on this table and then I'll put them back in after. So number one, let's weigh the dinosaur kale. All right, we're looking at 4.25 ounces. 5.34 ounces, 5.1 ounces. Yeah, so it's looking like we got a 1/4 pound from each of these. 6.2 ounces. Wow. 4.8 ounces. All right, so off of 1 month growth for these 4 varieties, dinosaur kale, Siberian kale, arugula, and Mizuni red mustard. We got just over a 1/4 pound of each. Pretty happy with this result, showing you guys what you can expect if you get one of these. That's gonna do it for this section. I'll see you in a few weeks. All right, it's day 64. These towers are stacked. We finally have some flowers coming in, including the sunflowers, which we're gonna take a look at. But I think it's time we do our final comparison. I'm gonna give the rest of my info, as well as my verdict, on what it's been like using each tower for over 2 months now. Starting with the EXO Tower, you know, I actually made a big mistake. You may have noticed in the last section, I didn't compare many things from the EXO to the other two. And the reason why is because many crops weren't doing well. They were bleached out, some were dying. And the reason why is because I was not doing the right ratio of nutrients. I was using way too much. Honestly embarrassing. Like, that's a rookie mistake. But the more I thought about it, maybe that's perfect, because if you guys are considering getting a tower, that's something you're gonna have to think about. You have to do your nutrients right, or they're not gonna grow well. So hopefully you can learn from my mistake, if nothing else. What I did was result back to what I know best, which is Tower Garden solution. I replaced some of the plants, and sure enough, all my problem crops, the basil, the cilantro, the kale, it's all growing very well. So that said, beyond my mistake, I think the EXO Tower has done phenomenally. I've got 3 good harvests off this tower, and I think it's a viable option for people who may have less space, who want something a little bit more cutesy and less bulky to look at than the other two. Or maybe you want to go even smaller, because I mean, mine has 24 plants, but it could go down to 8 or even 4. And that's pretty cool, because then you could fit it into really unique spaces, right? Whether that's your bedroom or a kitchen counter or an office space. And I just noticed they released their own lighting kit, which is cool. I had to make my own, right, with these Barina T8s, which I do think were a bit too powerful. I've noticed some excess algae growth in the base because the base is also getting blasted with light. And overall, the EXO Tower comes in at the lowest cost between the 3. You could pick up an EXO Tower with 24 spots for roughly $350. And now let's talk about the ALTO Garden. And this is their GX model tower. You know, when you're looking for hydroponic towers online, especially on places like Amazon, 9 out of 10 things you see is shipped overseas by sketchy brands that offer no customer support. They have no how-to setup videos. Like, those are not the ones you want. They are based in the US. That's what first stuck out to me. And I'm happy to report that their tower grows phenomenally as well. I mean, from the pak choi, the mustard greens, the basil, all the lettuces, the sunflower, like, there's nothing I threw at this tower it couldn't grow. And that is pretty awesome, because if you're looking for something that's not as small as an EXO Tower, but doesn't cost as much as a tower garden, well, then the ALTO is your easy choice, because it's gonna come in at roughly $600 to $650, and it includes everything. The tower, the lights, the rock wool, and that's pretty awesome. So I would recommend them to anybody. And finally, let's talk about the tower garden. As we have seen throughout this experiment, this tower has produced the thickest and fullest result, which is certainly due to having these more powerful lights. For example, if we compare the sunflowers, you see the sunny on the ALTO grew well. It's about 2 feet in length. But compared to the tower garden, which grew this massive stalk just trailing up the side, like over 4 feet high, the petals are starting to come in. We could just always tell this tower is producing things bigger, it's doing it faster. These lights just are better quality. The tower pots themselves also seem to be a little bit higher quality material. You do get the perk of having the high density pots, not just the low density. But for these things, you're also going to pay the highest price. So if you're gonna pick up a tower garden home with the light attachment, that's going to come in at just over $1,000. I, of course, have grown on tower gardens for a few years now. I love these towers. I recommend them to anybody, especially if you're looking for a commercial operation like I was. And this is a head of cabbage that I'm just gonna let keep growing. But that pretty much does it, guys. I hope these 3 towers are just perfect for you, depending on your available space, your budget. I hope this video has helped you in making a buying decision or just learning about these systems. If you're interested in acquiring one, visit the links in the description. These are affiliate links. I so appreciate when you use them. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next one.